I woke up drenched in sweat, my body aching, my throat dry as sandpaper. At first, I thought it was just the flu, some nasty virus making the rounds at the office. But within an hour, I knew something was seriously wrong. A burning pain deep in my gut. A fever that made my skin feel like it was sizzling from the inside out. And the worst part, something was wrong down there. I spent the morning in denial, convincing myself I'd eaten something bad, maybe caught a stomach bug. But by midday, it was clear I needed a doctor. I drove myself to urgent care, head pounding, every muscle aching. The nurse took one look at me and ushered me in ahead of half the waiting room. 2 hours later, I sat across from a doctor who didn't bother sugarcoating things. "It's an STI," she said, flipping through my chart. "It's treatable, but you need to be honest. Have you had any new partners recently?" I barked out a laugh. "No, I've been with the same woman for 8 years." She gave me a look, not judgmental, just waiting. "My wife," I added, the words tasting different now. "Then you should talk to her." I left the clinic feeling like I'd been dropped into someone else's life. This wasn't my problem. This was the kind of thing that happened to other people. Reckless people, liars, cheaters. Not me. But if I hadn't cheated, then only one possibility remained. Emily. The idea was so absurd that I actually considered every other possibility first. Maybe the test was wrong. Maybe I'd picked it up some other way, dirty gym equipment, a shared towel, some ridiculous freak accident. But deep down, I already knew. Emily had been acting different. Not in the obvious movie-style way, no lipstick on collars, no sneaky text messages. It was subtler. She had started making these little offhand remarks, ones that felt harmless in the moment but added up to something bigger. "You don't have to wait up for me. I just need space right now. I feel like I don't even know who I am anymore." I'd assumed it was stress. I'd assumed a lot of things. But now, all those moments slotted into place like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even realized I was solving. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I did something completely out of character. I planned. "Hey," I said that night over dinner, pushing my food around my plate. "You know that vacation we talked about? I think you should take it." She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I think it'll be good for you." For a second, something flickered across her face. Relief? Guilt? Or maybe just excitement. She left 3 days later. And 3 weeks after that, she came home. Pregnant. She walked through the front door, all sun-kissed and glowing, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of our life. I stood there, gripping the back of the couch, barely able to keep my voice steady. "You're pregnant." She dropped her bags and smiled. "I know. Can you believe it?" My pulse pounded in my ears. "No, Emily. I really can't." And just like that, the game was over. For 3 agonizing seconds, we just stood there, staring at each other. Emily was waiting for me to react the way a loving husband should, rushing to her, wrapping her in my arms, gushing about how incredible this news was. But I wasn't that man. Not anymore. I forced my mouth to move. "How far along are you?" Her eyes flickered. A hesitation so small most people wouldn't have caught it. But I wasn't most people. I was the guy who had just spent 3 weeks analyzing every single lie this woman had ever told me. She tucked her hair behind her ear, a nervous tick she always did when she was about to spit some polished-up version of the truth. "Just a few weeks." I exhaled slowly. Bullshit. I wasn't a doctor, but I knew enough basic math to know she had been gone for 3 weeks. That meant she had gotten pregnant before the trip. And I knew for a fact it wasn't mine, because the last time we'd been together had been before my infection. I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "That's incredible. Really. A miracle." Her shoulders relaxed. She thought she was in the clear. "Yeah," she breathed. "It's crazy. I was feeling off in the Bahamas, but I thought it was just the heat. Then I missed my period, and I took a test at the hotel." She laughed, as if this were some kind of heartwarming anecdote. "I was going to tell you over the phone, but I wanted to see your face when I did." "You wanted to see my face?" I repeated. She still wasn't catching on. Emily stepped forward, placing a hand on my chest. "I know we weren't planning this, but I think it's a sign. Like, maybe this is exactly what we needed." I looked at her hand, then back at her face. And for a brief, fleeting moment, I almost admired her. The audacity, the absolute, unwavering confidence it took to stand in front of me and spin this into some kind of fairy tale. I let the silence stretch, let her marinate in it. Then, very calmly, I said, "Emily, I have an STI." Her entire body jerked like I had slapped her. "What? You heard me." I took a step forward, forcing her to back up. "And I know I didn't get it from anyone else. Which means you gave it to me." Her mouth opened, then closed. The calculations behind her eyes were almost fascinating to watch, her brain scrambling between denial, outrage, and whatever pathetic excuse she was about to conjure up. Maybe it was a false positive," she said, her voice shaky but still grasping at control. "It wasn't. Or maybe you. Don't." My voice came out sharper than I intended, and she flinched. "Don't even try to pin this on me." For the first time since she walked through the door, she actually looked scared. Not of me, but of the fact that the story she had prepared wasn't going to work. "Who is he?" I asked. She shook her head quickly, eyes wide. "There's no one. Emily. I swear. Emily." She jumped. For a second I thought she might cry, but instead, her entire face hardened, her lips pressing into a thin, defiant line. And then, in the coldest voice I had ever heard from her, she said, "It doesn't matter." Something in my chest went cold. "It doesn't matter?" She squared her shoulders. "I don't know what you want me to say. Do you want me to beg? Cry? Would that make you feel better?" I stared at her, hardly believing what I was hearing. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice sharper now, like I was the problem. "But that doesn't change anything. This baby is still happening. Our marriage is still happening. And you're just going to have to deal with it." A slow, eerie calm settled over me. I nodded, smiled even. "Okay," I said, "if that's how you want to play it." And just like that, the real game began. Emily thought she had won. She thought she had me backed into a corner, that I would just accept what she had done, raise another man's child, and move on like nothing happened. Like I was some pathetic, spineless idiot who would just deal with it. I almost laughed. I wasn't going to deal with anything. I was going to end this, but not the way she expected. I let her believe for a while that I was processing things, that I was taking time to come to terms with it all. I played the part of the wounded husband, quiet, distant, pacing around the house like I was lost in my own thoughts. But I wasn't lost. I was planning. And the first step? Finding out exactly who had done this to me. Emily was smart, careful. She wasn't the type to leave an obvious trail. No suspicious texts left open. No random names popping up in her call history. But people always slip up somewhere. I started small. Checked our shared phone bill for repeated numbers. Scrolled through her Instagram, looking for any new follows, any posts she had commented on recently. Then I went deeper, and that's when I found it. A single email. She had forgotten to delete it. Probably assumed I'd never bother looking. It was buried under travel confirmations and work spam, sent from an address I didn't recognize. But the message itself told me everything I needed to know. "You sure he won't find out?" No name, no context, just that one damning sentence. I stared at the screen for a long time, my pulse steady, my mind cold and sharp. Then, slowly, I clicked on the sender's profile. And there it was, James Carson, a name I recognized immediately, because James wasn't just some random guy. He was my best friend. For a moment, my vision blurred. Not from anger, not from shock, but from the sheer, insulting stupidity of it all. She hadn't even bothered to be creative. Out of every man in the world, she had chosen the one person I trusted most. I should have felt rage, betrayal, devastation. Instead, I felt something much, much worse. I felt nothing at all. Because this wasn't just an affair. This was war. And I was about to play my next move. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That would have been too easy, too fast. And if there was one thing I had learned from Emily, it was patience. She had spent months lying to my face, covering her tracks, convincing herself that I would never find out. She thought she had control. She was wrong. I sat on the information for a full week. A week of pretending, of watching her move around the house like nothing had changed. She hummed in the kitchen while making coffee. She scrolled through her phone on the couch, occasionally glancing up at me with carefully measured concern. "Are you okay?" she'd ask, her voice soft, her eyes studying me for any signs that I was breaking. I'd nod, smile a little, just thinking, and every time she would relax, because in her mind, I was exactly what she had always assumed, a man who wouldn't do anything. By the time I made my next move, I had every detail lined up perfectly. Emily always had dinner with her mom on Thursdays. It was a routine she never missed. So that Thursday, as soon as she walked out the door, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to James' apartment. I knew he'd be home. He worked remote, never left the house unless he had to. The kind of guy who preferred the safety of four walls, where he could manipulate and deceive without ever facing real consequences. I parked a block away, walked up to his front door and knocked. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps. Then the door cracked open, and there he was. James Carson, my best friend. His face lit up in surprise. "Dude, what's up?" For a second, I almost admired his ability to fake it. He looked genuinely happy to see me, grinning like we were about to crack open some beers and watch a game, like he hadn't spent the past few months sleeping with my wife. "Hey man," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Got a minute?" "Of course. Come in." He stepped aside, and I walked in, taking in the space I had been in dozens of times before. The same apartment, the same furniture, the same smell of old coffee and laundry detergent. But now it felt different. Rotten. James shut the door behind me and clapped a hand on my shoulder. "So, what's up?" I turned to face him, met his eyes. And then, very calmly, I said, "I know." His smile faltered. "Know what?" "Don't do that." My voice was soft, almost gentle. "You know exactly what I'm talking about." For the first time I saw it, the moment the truth hit him like a punch to the stomach. The color drained from his face, and his mouth opened, searching for an excuse, a denial, anything. Look, I don't. Emily's pregnant." I cut in. "And it's not mine." His entire body tensed. "Bingo." I took a slow step forward. He took a step back. "Nothing to say?" I asked. He swallowed. Man, I didn't mean for." "Didn't mean for what, James?" I tilted my head, my voice still eerily calm. "Didn't mean to sleep with my wife? Didn't mean to impregnate her? Or didn't mean for me to find out?" He ran a hand through his hair, breathing hard. "She told me she was leaving you." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, really? And you believed that?" She said you guys were done. That you weren't." "Weren't what?" I took another step forward, and he hit the back of his couch. "Weren't sleeping together?" He froze. His silence told me everything. I leaned in slightly. "That's funny, James. Because if that's true, then where do you think my STI came from?" His mouth opened, closed. He looked like he was about to be sick. "Yeah," I said. "She gave me an infection, and I gave it right back to her before she went on that beautiful little vacation. So congratulations, man. Your baby's first gift? A disease." James' entire face contorted, like he was trying to process too much at once. The pregnancy, the infection, the fact that Emily had lied to him, too. But I wasn't done. "You thought she was leaving me for you?" I asked, shaking my head. "God, you're stupid. She wasn't going to leave. She was going to string you along, let you believe there was a chance, and then what? Magically realize she wanted to fix things with me?" I let out another humorless laugh. "You weren't her future, James. You were a backup plan. A pathetic, desperate little side piece." That one hit hard. He actually winced. And for the first time since I walked in, I saw the rage flicker in his eyes. "You think you're innocent in this?" he snapped, his voice shaking. "Maybe if you actually paid attention to her, she wouldn't have needed me." I smiled. "There it is." "The truth, you mean?" "No," I said, stepping even closer, until I was right in his face. "The moment you stopped pretending to be the good guy." He clenched his jaw so tight I thought his teeth might crack. I held his gaze for another long, excruciating second, letting him feel the weight of everything he had done, letting him know that I wasn't done yet. Then, without another word, I turned around and walked out the door, because this wasn't the grand finale. This was just the intermission that I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel so tightly my fingers ached. But it wasn't from rage. No, rage was too simple, too raw. What I felt was pure calculation. James was done. I had seen it in his eyes, the realization that he had been played just like I had. Emily had fed him lies, made him feel like he was special, like she was choosing him. And now, he was drowning in the truth. Good. Let him choke on it. But Emily still thought she was in control. She still thought she could manipulate her way through this, twist reality until it bent to her will. She had no idea what was coming. I parked in the driveway just as she was getting home from her mom's. She stepped out of her car, all smiles, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Hey," she called out, shutting the door. "Feeling any better?" "Better?" I almost laughed. I walked toward her, keeping my expression neutral. "Yeah," I said. "I was actually thinking we should do something special this weekend." Her eyes flickered with interest. "Oh, yeah, just us. A little getaway." She beamed, stepping closer. "That sounds amazing. You don't know how much that means to me." "Oh, Emily, you have no idea." We went inside, and I let her play the role of the good wife, chatting about her mom, scrolling through vacation spots on her phone, occasionally sneaking glances at me, as if she were checking to see if I was really falling for it. I played along perfectly. For the next 2 days, I was the perfect husband. I made her breakfast, massaged her feet, kissed her forehead whenever I passed her in the kitchen. I even started talking about baby names. And God, she ate it up. By the time Saturday rolled around, she was practically glowing. The plan was simple. Spend the night at a beautiful cabin a few hours away. Reconnect, enjoy the fresh air. She packed a bag, kissed me sweetly, and we set off down the road, my hands steady on the wheel, my heart pounding with anticipation. Because tonight, everything would change. Halfway through the drive, she fell asleep, her head resting against the window. I glanced over at her, at the woman I had once loved more than anything in the world, and felt absolutely nothing. We arrived at the cabin just as the sun was setting. It was beautiful, secluded, quiet, the kind of place people came to escape reality. Perfect. Emily stretched as she got out of the car, inhaling the crisp air. "Wow, this place is incredible," she said, her voice filled with awe. I smiled. "Only the best for you." She turned to me then, her expression softening. "I know this hasn't been easy," she murmured, "but I really think this could be a fresh start for us." I looked into her eyes, searching for anything. Remorse, guilt, regret. There was nothing. She actually believed she could erase what she had done. That's when I knew. She didn't deserve a confrontation. She didn't deserve an argument, or an emotional breakdown, or some dramatic fight. She deserved to watch everything she thought she had won crumble right in front of her. So I leaned in, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and whispered, "Oh, sweetheart, you have no idea what's coming." And then I walked inside, leaving her standing there in the cold. Because the game wasn't over. It was just about to begin. Emily followed me inside, completely oblivious to what was coming. She dropped her bag by the door, stretching her arms like she was finally relaxing after weeks of stress. "This place is perfect," she sighed, glancing around the cozy cabin. A fireplace, a huge bed, even a little kitchen. "You did good, babe." I smiled. "Glad you like it." I meant that. I wanted her to like it. I wanted her to feel safe, like she had one, like I had finally accepted everything, like this was a fresh start. Because the second she let her guard down, that's when I'd take everything from her. She walked over to the couch, plopping down with a happy sigh. "Okay, I'm officially in love with this place." Then she gave me a coy smile. "You said you had a surprise?" I nodded. "I do. But first, how about a toast?" She raised a brow. "A toast?" I walked into the kitchen, grabbing the bottle of wine I had packed. "To new beginnings," I said, pouring 2 glasses. Emily beamed, taking hers eagerly. "I love that." We clinked glasses, and she took a long sip, completely unaware that I hadn't touched mine. I sat down beside her, watching as she leaned into me, her body warm, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing my thigh. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought she was genuinely happy. I let the silence stretch, let her settle into the moment, and then, Just as I felt her body relax completely, I spoke. So, James knows. Her entire body tensed. The glass in her hand stopped midair, her breath hitching so slightly that most people wouldn't have caught it. But I wasn't most people. Slowly, she set her drink down. What? I turned to her, my expression unreadable. I went to see him, the color drained from her face. You. And guess what? He thought you were leaving me for him. I let out a small, amused laugh. Can you believe that? Emily's mouth opened, then closed. Her brain was scrambling, trying to figure out what I knew, how much damage had already been done. He's lying, she blurted out. He's trying to ruin us. Oh, I know. I tilted my head. I know exactly what he was trying to do, just like I know what you were doing. She swallowed hard. It's not. Not what, Emily? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Not what it looks like. Not your fault. Not real. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't buy it. Not this time. Please, she whispered. I gave you an STI. I cut in, my voice calm, steady. And you gave it right back to James. And now, you're pregnant. A single tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't mean for this to happen. I laughed. Actually laughed. You didn't mean to sleep with my best friend? You didn't mean to come back pregnant and act like it was some kind of miracle? I shook my head. That's the difference between you and me, Emily. You don't mean anything you say. She reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I love you, she whispered. I exhaled sharply. No, you don't. Yes, I do, she insisted, fresh tears falling. I made a mistake. No, I interrupted. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, leaving the stove on, saying something you didn't mean. I leaned in closer, my voice dropping. What you did, that's a choice. Her shoulders trembled, her breath shaky. I stood up, looking down at her with nothing but cold indifference. You want to know the real surprise? I asked. She blinked, confused. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, turning the screen toward her. A video of James, spilling everything. The moment she saw it, she gasped. You recorded the whole thing? Yeah. I pocketed the phone, giving her a small, knowing smile. And it's already backed up. Her hands flew to her mouth. Why would you? Because I wanted you to see something? I murmured, stepping closer, lowering my voice until I was right in her ear. Her breath hitched. I leaned in even further. You lost. And just like that, the game was over. Emily sat there, frozen, her breath shallow, her hands clenched in her lap. I could see it happening the moment her brain snapped. The moment she realized she wasn't the mastermind here. She wasn't the one in control. I was. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I smiled. Nothing to say? She blinked rapidly, then shook her head, as if she could physically reset the situation. You don't understand, she whispered. Oh, I understand perfectly. No, you lost. I repeated, slow and deliberate, letting the words sink in. She flinched like I had slapped her, and then, like the pathetic coward she was, she switched tactics. Tears. Her voice cracked as she reached for me, her fingers trembling. Please, I love you. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. I pulled back, tilting my head. It just happened? She nodded desperately, latching onto the idea like it was her last lifeline. Yes, I made a mistake. There it is again, I muttered, shaking my head. That stupid little word. Her brows furrowed. What? Mistake. I took a slow step toward her, watching as she shrank into the couch. A mistake is when you trip over a crack in the sidewalk. A mistake is when you forget to set your alarm. A mistake is not months of lying. A mistake is not sneaking around behind my back, screwing my best friend, and then trying to sell me some fairy tale about a miracle baby. Her lips trembled. I thought maybe. What? I challenged. That I'd just accept it? That I'd raise your little cheating trophy like it was mine? She let out a soft sob, her hands gripping the couch cushion so tightly her knuckles turned white. I let the silence stretch between us, let her feel it, and then I dealt the final blow. I already filed for divorce. Her head snapped up so fast I thought she might break her neck. You what? I smiled. Yesterday. Signed, sealed, delivered. Her entire body twitched with panic. No, 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 we can fix this. Oh, I know you can't, I said, feigning sympathy. But don't worry. I made sure this would be as easy as possible for you. She shook her head wildly, her breath coming in quick gasps. No, no, I don't want that. I want us. There is no us, Emily. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. And then the final nail in her coffin. I sent the video to your parents. Her entire soul left her body. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. I took out my phone and scrolled, letting her see the message. The one I had sent to her mother. The woman she spent her entire life trying to impress. The second she read the preview, she screamed. You! She lunged for my phone, but I stepped back easily. Oh, relax. I sighed. I didn't send it to your job. Yet. Her eyes snapped to mine, wild. You wouldn't. I smirked. And right then, I watched something shatter inside her. The realization. The pure horror of what she had done and what it was about to cost her. Her marriage. Her reputation. Her entire carefully curated life. And I watched, savored, as she finally understood what I had known for weeks. She had already lost. Emily collapsed back onto the couch, her entire body trembling. The tears that had once been a weapon were now real, ugly, panicked sobs that she couldn't control. She knew. She finally knew. I had taken everything from her. And yet, somehow, she still wasn't done. This isn't fair, she choked out, her voice raw. You're punishing me like I'm some kind of monster. I laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Emily, you are a monster. She shook her head violently. No, I made a mistake. Stop calling it that. I snapped, my patience finally breaking. This wasn't a mistake, Emily. This was who you are. She flinched like I had slapped her, but I didn't care. I wasn't playing her game anymore. You're a liar, I continued, stepping closer. A manipulator. A selfish, disgusting excuse for a human being. And worst of all, I leaned down, meeting her tear-filled eyes. You thought you were smart. Her lips trembled. But you weren't, I whispered. You were sloppy. You were arrogant. You thought you could lie and cheat and walk away with everything. And now, I stood up straight, looking down at her. You have nothing. Her breathing hitched, and for a second, I thought she might actually pass out. But then something snapped in her. Her expression twisted, and suddenly, the tears were gone. You think you're so righteous, she spat, her voice dripping with venom. Like you're some kind of victim. I raised a brow. Pretty sure I am. She let out a bitter, humorless laugh. You were never enough for me. And there it was. The real Emily. The one who had been hiding behind fake tears and pretty little lies. I smiled. Then I guess it's a good thing you don't have me anymore. Her jaw clenched, her nails digging into the couch cushion. You think you can just walk away and ruin my life? Oh, sweetheart, I sighed. I already did. She opened her mouth, but before she could spew out whatever pathetic defense she was about to throw at me, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, checked the screen, and grinned. Speak of the devil, I muttered, answering the call. Emily watched, confused, her brows furrowed in panic. Hey, I said into the phone. Yeah, we're here. Everything's fine. Just finishing up. A pause. Then I smirked. Oh, don't worry. She'll be ready soon. I hung up and slid my phone back into my pocket, turning to Emily with a slow, satisfied smile. Who was that? She demanded. I took my time answering, watching the anxiety creep up her spine. Then finally I said it. Your parents. Her entire body locked up. No, her voice was barely a whisper. Oh, yes, I said cheerfully. They're on their way. She shot up from the couch, panic flooding her eyes. You had no right. I laughed. No right? Emily, you're pregnant with another man's baby and tried to pin it on me. You lost any rights the moment you unzipped James' pants. She started shaking. You don't understand. No, I cut in coldly. You don't understand. Your entire life is about to fall apart. and you deserve every second of it. And with that, I turned on my heel and walked to the front door. Emily stayed frozen in place, breathing hard, staring at me like I had just set fire to her world. Because I had. And I wasn't even done yet. The knock on the door was sharp, loud, final. Emily jumped like she'd been electrocuted. Her face was a mess of panic and rage, her breathing uneven, her hands shaking so badly I thought she might collapse. For the first time since this whole thing started, she was truly afraid. Not just of being caught, not just of the fallout. She was afraid because, for the first time in her entire life, she wasn't the one pulling the strings. And she had no idea what was about to happen next. I turned to her, giving her one last cold look. Showtime. Then I opened the door. Her parents stepped inside, the tension immediate. Her father, David, looked off. Too quiet, too stiff. Her mother, Linda, was the opposite. Her face pinched, her lips pursed so tightly they were nearly white. I didn't have to say a word. They had already seen the video. Emily's mother broke the silence first. Tell me it's not true. Emily inhaled sharply. Mom, tell me it's not true. Emily's mouth opened, closed. Then, just like that, the tears started again. It's not what you think. Oh, really? Her mother's voice was deadly quiet. Because what I think is that my daughter is pregnant with another man's child and tried to convince her husband it was his. Emily's face twisted. I can explain. Explain. Her father finally spoke, his voice rough and disgusted. Explain what, exactly? That you've humiliated your husband? That you've disgraced this family? That you've lied to everyone who's ever cared about you? Emily wilted under his words, her shoulders curling inward. Dad, please. Her mother let out a sharp, humorless laugh. Oh, sweetheart. Don't, Dad. Please your way out of this. Do you have any idea how this looks? Emily snapped. How this looks? She shrieked, her voice cracking. You're worried about how this looks? Her mother flinched at the outburst, but Emily wasn't done. You're embarrassed? She spat. You're embarrassed? What about me? Do you have any idea what I'm going through? What he's doing to me? She pointed a shaking finger at me, her face twisting with fury. He's punishing me like I'm some kind of cheater, I offered, tilting my head. She whirled on me, eyes wild. You think you're a saint? She screamed. You think you're perfect? Maybe if you had actually paid attention to me, none of this would have happened. Her mother sucked in a sharp breath. Emily. But Emily was gone now, fully unhinged, unraveling right in front of me. You ignored me for years, she snarled. You were boring. You were predictable. And I wanted. She stopped herself too late. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Her father exhaled slowly, running a hand down his face. Oh my God. Her mother's lips trembled, like she had just been slapped. And me? I just smiled. There it is, I murmured. Emily blinked rapidly, realizing, too late, what she had just admitted. I didn't mean. No, I said, stepping forward, lowering my voice until it was just for her. You meant every word. Her face crumpled. Her mother turned away, closing her eyes like she couldn't even look at her. Her father just stared, ashamed. Emily broke. She collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, gasping, begging. Please, she whispered. Please don't do this. I don't want to lose everything. I crouched down beside her, letting her feel my presence. And then, in the calmest voice I had ever spoken in, I said, but you already did. I stood up, turned to her parents, and nodded toward the door. We're done here. And as I walked out, leaving her to drown in the mess she created, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Freedom. I stepped outside, inhaling the crisp night air. It smelled different, cleaner, lighter, like I had finally been released from some invisible weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying. Behind me, I could still hear Emily sobbing. Her parents remained inside, their voices hushed but sharp, cutting through her wails. It didn't matter. Whatever they were saying, whatever she was saying, it was all just noise now. I was done listening. I walked to my car, my hand steady as I pulled out my keys. No shaking, no hesitation, No second guessing. Then the cabin door slammed open. Wait! I didn't even flinch. I just sighed and leaned against the car, watching as Emily stumbled out, barefoot, her face red and blotchy, her hair a mess. She looked wrecked, the perfect image of a woman who had lost everything. I waited, my expression blank, as she ran toward me, her breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. Please, she choked out, grabbing my arm. Don't leave like this. I stared down at her fingers digging into my sleeve, then slowly peeled them off, one by one. Like what? She let out a ragged breath. Like you don't care. I tilted my head. Emily, I said, my voice calm, steady. I don't care. She flinched, hard, like the words physically hurt her. I should have walked away then. I should have just gotten in my car and left her standing there, broken and desperate. But there was one last thing I needed to say. One final nail in the coffin. I stepped forward, just close enough that she had to look up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. You remember what you said? I murmured. Back inside? That I wasn't enough for you. Her face crumpled. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. I didn't let her finish. And that's fine. Because now, I smiled. You aren't enough for me either. Her breath hitched. And the best part? I continued, lowering my voice like I was telling her a secret. I get to walk away. I get to start over. And you? You get to live in the ruins. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Good. I turned, opened the car door, and slid into the driver's seat. She took a step forward, panic flashing in her eyes. Wait! But I didn't wait. I started the engine, put the car in drive, and without another word, without another glance in her direction, I drove away. Emily's sobs faded into the distance. The cabin disappeared in my rearview mirror, and with every mile, with every turn of the wheels, something inside me settled. No more anger, no more pain, just the quiet, steady hum of freedom. And it was the most beautiful sound in the world.